Okay, let's jump into annotating the text. Okay, so annotating the text is not something new. Really, this is the same kind of thing that the practices that we've been doing in your close reader. Okay, so this is going to be especially important as you go through your sources that you've accumulated to make meaning for your research paper. Okay, you've got to start to make those deeper connections. So I'm wondering how many of you could raise your hand at this statement. How many of you have ever read an entire paragraph, a passage, or page? You get to the end and you have absolutely no idea what you just read. I know because I've seen you guys do it. You have that totally zoned out look on your face even after having read a full page. So my guess is that it happens a lot. So that is why your teachers are asking you to annotate your texts right now. Okay, we are looking for you to make deeper connections and deeper understanding with the text rather than just taking a highlighter and highlighting a bunch of lines in these articles and in these papers. So what is annotating? Annotating is the act of making a note in any form while reading. So it could be one of your own thoughts, it could be a question, anything that you're thinking about the text, you need to write down. Okay, so what is annotation not? It is not highlighting a bunch of stuff without a purpose. You can see here on the screen this picture of this book that's completely highlighted. Guys, that is not okay. You are not highlighting everything. Okay, you cannot highlight the majority of the text and call that annotation because it's not. Okay, it is not drawing symbols without taking notes. You have to actually have some kind of note. Now, if you want to draw a number on a particular part and then you want to include a note, that's okay, but it's got to actually mean something. Okay, so why do we annotate? Okay, the majority of reading is just skimming. This is not helpful when reading for understanding. So why do we do it? Annotation helps to slow you down. Yes, we need you to actually slow down and take the time to read these articles to find the important details. It promotes you to be an active reader than a passive reader so that when you get to the end of this, you actually know what you've read. This also will help improve your reading and writing skills and allow the reader to make deeper connections. Remember, you have a thesis that you're trying to prove, so you really should be thinking about your thesis as you're reading through these things and making notes specific to those points that are in your thesis. Okay, so what will you need to annotate? Okay, now I told my students initially last week that it would be best if they had PDF copies of their sources so that you could print them off this week. I really genuinely feel like the best way for you to do this is to print off your sources and have them hard copy. Now I recognize that not everybody has that option and that's fine, but this is going to be a lot harder to do if you're doing it on a screen. Now I have seen some people that have copied and pasted into a Google Doc and then you can highlight a specific part and make a note. That is okay. You could do it like that, but just remember that you're going to have to highlight and you're going to have to make notes and then there's going to be all those kind of notes all over the paper. If that works better for you, that's great, that's fine, just as long as you have the notes there. Now, if you do choose to print out your articles, which I still highly recommend, you're going to need out the paper copies of the text. You're going to need possibly some Post-it notes, definitely some highlighters, possibly some different colored pens, and most definitely a pencil. And then the annotation guide that I'm going to show you here in just a second. Okay, so before you go any further and you start this annotation process, you're going to want to gather all of these tools together so that you're prepared and ready to go. So here's an annotation guide. This is going to help you figure out what the symbols you need to put in there and what kind of notes you need to take. So you're probably going to want to pause the video at this point and go through what each one of these symbols would mean. Now, this is just a suggested guide, okay? This is going to help you kind of make clear, concise notes. Now, if you have a different way of taking notes with different type of symbols that work for you, that's fine as long as you know what they mean. However, these are probably more accepted specific symbols for annotation. So go ahead and pause the video right now, take a look at some of these, make sure you understand why they're being used and how you could possibly use these for your own purposes as you start to annotate. When you're done, go ahead and restart the video. Okay, so steps to annotating a text. Number one, you need to preview the text. Remember, with any type of informational text, it is super important that you are previewing and looking to see what the article or the source has for you. You're going to want to look at the headlines, subtitles, pictures, captions, all of that so you get a good idea of what you're going to be reading. This is the pre-reading portion. Step 2, read a brief portion of the text. Okay, depending on the length, that could mean a couple paragraphs, it could mean one paragraph. Okay, this way you're just getting your feet wet a little bit so that you kind of know what the context of this specific article might be. Step 3, go back over the text you just read. Yes, so go back over the couple of paragraphs you just read, and you're going to use that annotation guide to start making some notes on your text. Step 4, this is where you're going to be like an active reader. You're going to go back and check to see if your annotations make sense. Okay? Are you adding in new text in the margins, or are you just rewriting what you underlined or highlighted? You need to really use your own words. This is that practice with making sure that you are paraphrasing and not plagiarizing, right? So you're using your own words as much as possible. Make sure you write notes that accompany those symbols, okay? So don't just put a smiley face. You need to put a smiley face and then add an additional note. Why did you put a smiley face there? What was it? Or maybe you're going to use those numbers as a guide, right? So maybe you are going to use a number 1 if that connects with the first subpoint in your thesis. A 2 if something connects to the second subpoint in your thesis. That way, when you go to start making note cards next week, you're going to go, oh, that connects with that, and you're going to easily be able to put it into your note cards. Step 5, repeat steps 2 through 4 again and again and again, but this time you're going to read small chunks and annotate. Read another small chunk and annotate. Read another small chunk and annotate until you are done with the article, okay? You, again, every time are going back to check to make sure that it makes sense. So, normally if we were in school, we would have you practice this with us, okay? This specific practice comes from the Gettysburg Address, which I'm hoping you're all familiar with, right, by President Abraham Lincoln. So if you look here, you can see the first couple paragraphs of the Gettysburg Address. I'm sure you're probably familiar with at least the first couple of lines. If we were to ask you to annotate this piece, here's what it would look like when it's completely done. Okay, I know I just skipped a bunch, but I want you to see what a completed annotation would look like. Okay, notice they even started by highlighting the first little bit and they put a question mark over it. Okay, because they didn't know what 7 years ago meant, which meant, hey, you got to pause for a moment and you got to go look up what that means. You cannot just put a question mark over it and then leave it. If you don't understand something, you got to look it up. Okay, you'll also notice here that they circled the word conceived twice and wrote repetition. And they are thinking to themselves, okay, if they're using that word more than once, it probably means that it's important, okay? Same thing here, when they used an exclamation point. You can't just put an exclamation point without an additional note. So you'll notice there's an additional note added in here. Can any nation with similar values continue to exist? Notice, this isn't even a particular statement, but it's a further question which this particular student wanted to know. So as you go through here, you're going to notice there's lots of words circled, there's lots of words underlined, there's question marks, there's exclamation points, there's even numbers, 1, 2, 3. But all of these annotations have a purpose that connects to what the author of the further paper is trying to do or prove. Now remember, your goal is to try and prove that your event that you chose either had a positive or negative effect on society. So you're going to want to keep that in mind. And in fact, what I would even suggest you do as you're annotating is to keep your thesis out right next to you so that you know what you're trying to prove, and it will help you to know what you're looking for specifically in your articles and in your sources going forward. So guys, you need to take the time to go through your sources. It's going to take you a little bit of time. So maybe what you want to do is do one source a day. Okay, one source a day. You had to do a minimum of 4 sources. One source a day to annotate. Okay, we purposely are not giving you a ton of busy work this week because we want you to have the time to annotate appropriately. So I know I went through this quickly. If at any point you need to go back, this presentation is going to be linked on your teacher's Google Classroom so that you can pull up the presentation and go at your own pace if you need to. Remember, your teachers are here to help you. So if you're getting lost with any part of this research project, you really need to either email us or you need to jump onto Zoom. We know that many of you have not been going on to our Zoom meetings consistently, and I'm really going to encourage you that if you're feeling at all lost at this point with this research project, that you need to come Zoom with us face to face so that we can help you. Okay, guys, good luck with your annotating this week. If you have questions, email us or come to our Zoom meetings on Wednesday. We look forward to seeing you. Take care.